La, 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 la. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the BODcast with Alli and Chris. I'm Alli.
And I'm Chris.
And today we have a very special guest. I don't know why it took me so long to get him on here, but he is incredible. I've been admiring him for years on social media. Mr. Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist, left a prominent career in therapy to come help everyone else across the globe instead of being stuck in an office. So I'm excited to have you here. He is one of the smartest psychologists that I've actually ever read any of his material. So I'm super excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. You and I have talked off and on Twitter for a while, and I've been waiting to have a conversation with you. Someday I knew I would. So here we are. Dream come true.
I'm sorry you waited. You should have said something sooner. I've been a little distracted,
Hey, I hear you.
I was happy now and then.
Yeah. You know how it is. You have 4 kids. I have 3. There's distractions.
You work and you help people, and then the moment you pause for breath, there's kids just swarming you and bringing you toward the ground, and that's just the game.
Completely. You know what though? I love that about that. I don't.
It is.
When they're jumping on top of you, I call it an unauthorized dog pile.
Yes.
And I use it without.
And for me, it's the swarm. It's the swarm. It just brings you to the ground, and you're part of it.
And it feels so good, right? Because it's like at some point they're going to be too grown to do that. So.
Well, one thinks. One assumes that they will, but who knows?
One assumes. My 15-year-old is taller than me. She's like Chris's height. She definitely has a few extra pounds on me because she's taller, and she is way stronger than I ever was at her age. So when she dog piles, it's more like a tackle from the side.
Yes.
Yeah. And she still loves it. So
that's wonderful.
Who knows? Maybe she'll stop when I'm a grandma.
So
today, I'm just going to jump off over there. You put out a thread, and you had trauma, PTSD, attachment theory, a number of different things in the thread. And I come across people all the time with trauma. I've dealt with it myself. I have my take on how to handle it, but I know that but attachment theory is not really something that I remember learning about in grad school. And if we did, it was so fast that I don't remember it. So I wanted to talk a lot about that, about trauma, about how, because you put out something very specific, and you said prolonged physical discomfort helps with trauma. And that triggered me to go, like exercise, because I know what that does. And you said yes, and there's other modalities. So I definitely want us to talk about that today. So since we're jumping in the deep end, because Alli doesn't tiptoe into anything, if you know me a little, then you know me a lot in that way. So let's jump into trauma. You were talking a little bit off screen about left side of the brain and right side of the brain. Yep. And how traumas I think you're going to go into how traumas get triggered. So I just wanted to hand it over to you and tell us, let's start with how the brain works.
Absolutely. So let me tell you how the brain works. There's the left side of the brain, the logical side of the brain. Very simplistic, but the left side of the brain is logic. Your language, your math, your spatial reasoning, everything like that is over here on the side. Long-term plans also. That's important to note for later. Over here is the emotions. The short-term planning, maximize pleasure, minimize pain in the next 5 seconds. What am I feeling? What's my gut instinct? Things like that are over here on this side. So you've got logic and emotion, and only enough energy to really do one. So when you have an emotional storm of any kind, your emotional brain spikes, but it diminishes your logical functioning to fuel that spike. And the really pronounced version of this is post-traumatic stress disorder. During a PTSD episode or panic attack, you've seen people even just be the so-called triggered when the logical brain diminishes and the emotional brain spikes, and you cannot tell them to calm down. You can't logic them out of it. You can't explain how it's supposed to work. Their logic is diminished. Their emotional brain is high and says, I need to maximize my pleasure and minimize my pain for the next 5 seconds to make myself feel better. Mm-hmm. This is an emergency. Everything is terrible. When people say oh, trauma this and trauma that, what they're saying is they have some sort of memory that when they touch that memory, it has such a powerful self-defense mechanism of danger, of harm, of fear, that the emotional brain goes zoop and it says something is reminding me of a painful time, something bad could happen. I'm going to go this high, drain the logic, but go this high and just be super hyper vigilant and protect myself from whatever is about to happen to me. So that right there, that is why people get completely irrational when something upsets them, when they have a PTSD episode, when they're in a panic attack territory. But if they have chronic ongoing anxieties where they're 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, they are actively like this all the time anyway, and one little bump goes and it's even worse. So people who have chronic anxiety issues, from attachment issues for example, they operate at that level all the time. This is why they don't make great long-term plans. They can't stick to them. They violate their principles without wanting to, but they do it to try to make people like them more and diminish the pain in the moment. Everything becomes about soothing the emotional brain instead of living to the logical long-term plans. So when you have PTSD, your brain says, full real trauma, your brain says, what are all the factors that went into this? So why did it happen? And how do I make sure it never happens again? How do I stay safe?
Right.
And when you spike, those are left brain logical processes. When you spike emotionally, your brain can never process that thought, those questions logically. So it is always stuck on the emotional brain. And every time you touch anything then that is related to that original trauma, your brain says, this could be a dangerous part. I've never figured out what all went into it. This could be it. And spike. And then your brain says, how do I stay safe? And it can't. So it circles on the emotional brain and starts trying to figure out how to stay safe and then how to self-soothe. And this is why people dive into all kinds of activities that are just irrational when they are set off and everyone else is watching going, what are you doing? Why are you reacting this way? It's because they have shut down the logical brain, spiked the emotional brain. Their brain thinks they're going to die. So it's spiking, and running. That is the process of being emotionally triggered and being set off and what trauma does to the brain. And it's to varying degrees.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's what the brain's doing.
What I've heard recently, and the reason why I jumped into the trauma part was not just because you reminded me of that, but I hear a lot, especially, and I hear my teenager say it. She says things like my anxiety, which she doesn't have, or trauma. And I'm thinking, okay, hold up. And I heard a psychologist say, well, everybody's been through trauma because it always comes from a lack of feeling like you're in control of a situation. I'm like, well, that's an entire childhood. And we're all walking around trauma victims and we're all pushing each other's buttons. But there's clearly levels to this, right? Because I've had a full physical, post-traumatic stress moment. And that's completely different from any other, like, I got a little triggered and stressed out because something reminded me of a memory. And I feel like it's almost in vogue right now to be identifying and taking on these, mental issues. I don't want to call them mental illness because I don't think that it's an illness. It's just something that we need to work through. And I think that's a nasty label. But they take this on almost like they're trying to fit in with a whole set of people that everybody's giving attention to. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go along. I'm not even sure there's a question in there as much as where do we draw that line? Where do we draw the line between a real trauma, real PTS, and just, I don't like the situation very much, and reminding me of a crappy situation I went through before too.
Maybe that's the question. There it is. With that in mind, if a person is predisposed to some of that anxiety, so if they have, for example, attachment issues, their brain says, nobody likes me. I can never trust anyone. I can never be connected to anybody. It is all me. The only thing I can ever do to stay safe in my life is to worry more all the time because I can never open up or trust anyone. It's all me, staying safe, staying scared all the time. And bad things happen and your brain says, well, I just need to worry more than I was worrying before. That's why people with attachment issues, it rolls into what we often identify then as generalized anxiety disorder. The brain is just chronically agitated because it's trying to stay alive. It thinks you're alone in a wilderness, that tigers are going to eat you. It's a very big evolutionary process that is there for a purpose to keep you alive. But your brain in this case is wrong, and you are not in ancient pre-Neolithic hunter-gatherer times where a tiger is going to eat you. You're in modern-day therapy world, and people don't understand what you're doing and why.
It's really more of an amygdala type of place.
It is.
Right?
It sets you off because everything is scary, so you have no allies. You cannot trust anyone, and if you reveal you're weak, people will hurt you or they'll abandon you. So it is being on guard 24/7, even in social circumstances, even just going to a party, even just being with your friends. It is all dangerous and terrifying that you could reveal that you are a human piece of garbage and you don't deserve to be loved, and it's the attachment pieces are really deep. So then that lowers the threshold for anything to turn into a potential trauma that acts like trauma, that acts on the trauma pathways. It's not that they are experiencing a full post-traumatic stress well, I've been held up at gunpoint and shot in the arm and death-defying car crash. And they are acting that way, though, because their brain says, I am alone in the wilderness. Anything could happen to me. Everything is life and death, even social events. And then their brain says, what happened to this one little thing? How did this happen? How do I stay safe? I have no idea. Okay, so your threshold for developing PTSD symptoms from non-PTSD events starts to activate. So when people say, we all walk around with trauma, well, not really. That's the worst possible way to approach this and say everyone on earth is messed up and a victim and everybody's terrible. We all have to walk on eggshells 24 hours a day. And if you don't, you are an evil person.
Yeah, that's what it seems like is happening right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't call me by my correct title, pronoun, whatever, then
they're going to get really mad and scream at you.
Right? Then we're triggering something. We're pressing a button.
There is a big difference between this is who I am and I just want to be respected, and this is who I am and you must process it that way and address me as such so that my reality is fully validated. There's a big difference. One is who you are, and the other is forcing behavior from others and saying that this is, I deserve this, and if you don't do it, this is trauma. It really removes that because they don't feel they have control of this side of the brain anyway. They don't know how to diminish the emotional agitation, so it feels like a disorder. They feel helpless. Then there comes therapy world to say, hey, it's totally fine. You have this disorder. Here is how you can use this to force other people to be nice to you and validate your feelings, because that is the only power you have ever felt like you had, was to force them to do this. So that right there returns the power to people who feel like they've never had that power.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that no, never mind. I'm gonna skip that question. I was gonna say something like, is that why you left private practice?
In private practice, you are required to validate people's feelings. We are told never to be directive and tell people what to do, which is why people go into therapy and they hear, wow, how does that make you feel? What do you think you should do? Well, if I tell you what to do, that defeats the purpose because that's not your life. That's why people hear that as in therapy. They're like, don't ever tell people what to do because they'll sue you to death. So just ask them a bunch of questions and they're the expert. They should know what to do. They really know what to do deep down. Right. You are invalidating them. So yeah, it's like, dude, I want to do that. I want to help people. How can I help people? Well, hire the license, coach internationally, do it across the whole world.
Yeah, right. So I was going to say, it's like this is the whole sphere of coaching is just blowing up because of that. Because people want some advice. They want to be told what to do. They want someone to guide them along. Give me a bit of a path. Let me at least start to have something to get the ball rolling. Because otherwise, it's like, well, what am I coming to you for if you're not even going to help me get started?
Coaching is a numbers game. If you pay $100 in therapy, for example, out of pocket, you pay $100 in therapy out of your deductible, and you do that every week for 2 years, you are paying $10,000 in therapy. For 2 years of therapy, $10,000. Very few solutions. You have had to think up everything, and it's been validating your feelings for 2 years. Probably very little has changed. Or you can hire a coach. I charge $600 an hour. You hire a coach for 2 months, like 8 sessions, and that is what, $5,000, maybe $5,000, half the price, 2 months, and you're out the door. You have saved money. You have saved time.
Time is the important one.
And that is, and then you start implementing it because you have had a professional tell you what to do. So you didn't spend $10,000 and get nothing. You spent $5,000 and have exactly what to do for the rest of your life. That's the magic of coaching. So, right. Alli, there's your validation for your coaching too.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yes, but anyway. Okay, I want to go back into this prolonged physical discomfort that you
Yes.
talked about,
Yes.
because I'm familiar with EMDR. I've gone through it. I've had it.
Yep.
It was definitely something that I remember from grad school, and you just kind of validated exactly why I'm glad that I didn't go forward and spend all the time to get a license, only to eventually leave it anyway.
Yes.
So, not to diminish your path.
No, I understand that. I retired my license for exactly that reason. I fully sympathize.
So when people like criticize me, oh, but you're not a therapist, like, I didn't go get a license, but I got the education, so I can help
Correct.
people. Yeah, so I can
Correct.
actually like dig in and hurry it up by telling them like, we're going to do this and this and this. And exercise is one of those things.
Yes.
And EMDR, I love it because it has historically been the gold standard for rewiring the parts of the brain that are affected by trauma. My only criticism is it went out of the field, right? Walking in the field, literally, where she discovered it, and it went into the clinical setting where you're sitting down and now you're trying to recreate this. And I'm like, why don't we just put them on a treadmill and go for a walk? And like, can't we find a way to just get everybody on a treadmill and do therapy? Like, all right, like let's do it while we're moving and get the
Right.
dopamine going and all of that. Is that kind of where you were headed with some of that? Because you also said there were other modalities. I thought, what other prolonged physical discomfort can we do to people? Mine is
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
So,
Chris, it's prolonged physical discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
the cool thing about the human brain is that we don't just have the two sides. We've got the logic side and the emotional side. We've also got like the hindbrain and the other pieces of the brain that say, okay, what are the real dangers, and when do I need to shift these pieces of the emotion and brain back and forth? Because you do have part of the brain that says, okay, I'm in emotional social danger. Amp up the emotional intuitiveness, the emotional control, amp up the fear, stay alive over here. And you can't just logic your way back out because your logic is now diminished. But if you start experiencing what I call prolonged physical discomfort, pain is another way of saying this, but not necessarily pain. But when your body is something serious is happening to your body, right? 10,000 years ago, you're in the woods and you're emotionally upset. Your boyfriend has broke up with you 10,000 years ago. Your hunter boyfriend has broke up with you. You are now a gatherer who doesn't have a boyfriend, and you're sad and you're crying. You're like, what am I going to do? This is so sad. And your emotional brain is spiked, your logical brain is diminished. And then a bear starts chasing you through the woods, and you have to run for your life to try to get back to your little hunter gatherer village. Not a village at that time, but you know what I mean. Your brain says, I don't have time to be thinking about my boyfriend. I need to focus on something because there's something intensely physical happening with my body. I need to be running, jumping, not distracted by feelings, bring back spatial reasoning and bring back logic and bring all those things back online, drain the emotional brain, spike the logic to maximum, purely coldly logical, like not robot, but almost to that level of neutral, calm, ready to do what I need to do. And this is why when people reach the endurance phase, Alli, you know when I say the endurance phase, when you hit endurance, your brain says, okay, now I'm paying attention. There's something serious happening with my body. I need to drain the emotions and get logic back online, or this bear is going to eat me, or the tree will fall on me, or the whatever it is. Yeah, it is. It is, but it's when you are pushing, your brain finally takes note and says, reprioritize, drain the emotions, full logic. And when you do that, you've seen people when they're in it, when they're counting those last reps and they're like, and they go to like that animal place and their eyes are like peeled back.
Been
What
there.
they're doing is, yeah, exactly. The emotional brain is draining and the logical brain is coming back online, and they're almost like reptilian. They're almost reptilian. I've seen my buddy Jeff Putnam. He does ice baths, and he's videotaped it, and he sent me the video. And he starts out all like chipper, and by the end of it, he's like just gripping the side of the tub, looking around with like these animal snake movements of his head. And he gets out, and he has no memory of that time because he's just purely in that logical state, and that is it. When you reach that point, your brain starts draining. So I have people call me, clients call me panicking. I've worked with people during panic attacks, and I say, okay, where are you at right now? I'm at like 10 out of 10 anxiety, and it's good to keep score. I'm at 10 out of 10 anxiety. So that means they're like bumping the cap. They're about to have a panic attack. Panic attack is when you have no room to go and your brain goes fight or flight, absolute like freeze, body tremors, all kinds of stuff. You're completely maxed out.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're like sobbing their eyes out. And I say, okay, start doing jumping jacks. I don't want, that's dumb. No, do it. And so they start doing jumping jacks. And I did this with one of my buddies like a month ago. He's crying his eyes out, started doing jumping jacks, crying and doing jumping jacks. And then like panting into the phone. And then I said, all right, I can't do them anymore. Okay, drop to the floor, start doing push-ups. Oh, okay. So he started doing push-ups. I just, and so, okay, he couldn't do push-ups anymore. Okay, get back up. Start your jumping jacks again. Okay, Adam. So he started doing it. And about 4 or 5 minutes in, he's in good shape, unfortunately for him. So he took him a little while. He hit endurance. And he's like, oh, man, I'm at like, I don't know, I'm at like 9 out of 10. Okay, all right, where are you at? Right, then we do it for another 2 minutes, another set. Where are you at right now? And every time he would click down like 2 points. He hit endurance and then down to 7, then down to 5. Should I stop? No, don't stop. Don't ever stop at 5 because your brain will just spike right back up. If you do that, you believe you have no control because then this didn't work. You need to prove that you have control. So let's take it all the way down. Okay, where are you at now? I'm at like a 3. Okay, let's keep going. All right, all the way down. Where are you at? I'm at a 1. Thank you, Adam. That feels a lot better. Then he started laughing. Like, what was I thinking? I was upset. I was thinking I didn't want to live. I had run across somebody that I didn't want to run across. I was so upset. This is stupid. What was I thinking? His emotional brain drained. His logical brain came back online. It took maybe 20 minutes in total, I think. 20 minutes to go from I am miserable and do not want to live right now to what was I thinking? I'm calm. I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I'm going to have lunch. That
long enough for dopamine to kick in.
Long enough for dopamine to kick in. Serotonin also starts kicking in during that time. Serotonin is really what indicates that health and lowers your depression, lowers your anxiety. But then the endorphins, the adrenaline, all of that kicks in, but it drains the emotional brain to zero, the agitation. It calms. When you watch a brain scan, it stops. It's like fireworks. It stops and it soothes, and then the logical brain comes back from like dark and dim to actually brightness again. And you can see this. It's nuts. And it works. And then you are set at that for a long period of time because your brain has now said, I need to prioritize this to stay alive. This right here, this is what I call prolonged physical discomfort. You have to hit the endurance phase and then push through it and keep going until you at 1 or 0. You don't stop at 5. People make that mistake. And then they say, it didn't work. I have no control. They panic even more and go right back up.
It's like taking
go all the way to
antibiotics or something.
Exactly. It is. And then you feel powerless. So this is prolonged physical discomfort. It can be anything that involves hitting endurance phase and making yourself keep going through physical discomfort that could be pain. This is why teenagers cut themselves, is they are activating this process. As they are cutting themselves, they're activating this process. It is not about suicide. It is about doing this. They don't realize what they're doing, but they know it starts feeling better and it relieves that tension. It does all kinds of stuff. This is one piece of that.
It's not like full cuts, but just like they'll murk.
It can be. It can be anything. Any of that. Any prolonged pain where they have to make themselves do it, and they're focusing on the front left of their brain is the focus area, I believe. And they're focusing in, so it activates the left side of the brain because they're focusing, and then they're also pushing with that willpower, and it's draining the emotional brain. It's doing all of that, and it reactivates the logical side of the brain, and they feel a tremendous relief. They don't know why. Cutting is the bad version of that. That's why I don't just say pain. You have to be in pain through the endurance. It's prolonged discomfort.
Push-ups are painful.
Push-ups are painful, but you have to confuse the crap out of your body with something significant enough. So it's as simple as what I teach people is go in the bathroom and flex your arms and shoulders all the way to your fingertips, squeeze as hard as you can till you're shaking and cursing my name for having told you to do this, and then purposely relax it. But at the same time, do completely deep breaths in and out over and over and over, flood with oxygen, expand your lungs, and then squeeze again, and then shake till you're shaking, and then relax for like 10 seconds, then right back into it. And you do that 5 or 6 times while deep breathing, your anxiety starts crumbling really fast. You can go in a bathroom and do that for 5 minutes. If you're on a bad date, you can go in a bathroom and calm yourself down. If you're at work and your boss yells at you, you can calm yourself down in 5-10 minutes doing that. Anything that hits the endurance phase, and then you have to focus on the left front side of the brain and focus with your willpower and make yourself keep going into the physical endurance, and your body is just sweating and tremoring and all of that, that reaches this and activates it. You take it all the way down to you're completely calm. And that's what it is. That's the magic of why working out and stuff especially helps in some ways. When you are really agitated, you work out and all of a sudden you feel better. That's why.
See, and to me, I always felt like you were just running, like you feel like you want to run a run. Hi. Words are. You feel like you want to run away from the problem. So physically running gives you that sensation of like getting that relief of it. And so I guess that's...
You are focused so hard on running that your brain says, this running that I am doing must be something that is going to keep me alive. I don't have time for everything else. Shift everything into the running.
Okay.
That's what it is. You're tricking your brain.
So could we then take it one step? Can we do that with depression too? So if somebody's suffering from depression, is that like a longer term extended version of this?
Depression springs from anxiety. So a person gets anxiety where they start having fears about not having control over circumstances, not being able to protect themselves, not being able to stay safe or achieve their goals, and they get worried, and their brain thinks all they can do is worry, and it feels helpless. And when we start to feel helpless, we start to get depressed. So for men specifically, it's often feeling powerless in a circumstance to change events or influence our environment, or from not having a mission.
A lack of hope. It's not sadness.
Correct. Depression is about helplessness and powerlessness to achieve something important for men, especially. For women, depression often springs from feeling unloved or feeling useless to the people that they love. Those are usually where female depression comes in.
Gotcha.
And so then when they start feeling hopeless, like it will never get better, the depression worsens. The helplessness starts to slide into depression from anxiety. The hopelessness ratchets the depression up until they are fully hopeless, and then suicidal thoughts start coming in, or even just thoughts of death, of when I can never escape this, it will never get better, when am I going to die, because that's the only time this pain will end. And that's why suicide is not about wanting to die, it's about wanting the pain to end, but believing it never will, except with death. So doing this, it's harder because they are feeling so powerless in that circumstance. They start to feel helpless and powerless everywhere else. So empowering them in anything, I hate the word empowering because it's become so cheap, but giving them a sense of power and control in anything reminds their brain they have some control. And giving them solutions and helping implement it. Exactly.
I'm going to start with exercise, especially. So I've got clients that are dealing with grief, dealing with loss of children and things like that. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get you through it, but we're going to start with diet and exercise, because you can only control what you put in your mouth and what you do with your body. And once we have that sense of control as a foundation, then you can go and work through the grief process and all of that. And
the one thing I love about starting on the body when someone is depressed is that if you just move a bunch, you affect change in your body, and that proves you have some sort of control in your world. And that's so huge. It is that simple. If you just pick up a dumbbell and lift it while you are watching Netflix, eventually you will have muscles in that arm. And you can say, whoa, I did this. And that in itself then gives you a tiny amount of confidence toward the next solution. And then you just roll. And working out gives you serotonin. From what I've heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think cardio gives you more serotonin than lifting does, if I remember right. Not positive. But serotonin is like the thing that is correlated with depression. So when you activate a lot of that serotonin, you start beating the depression because your brain loves it and says, this is healthy, keep doing this. But we're supposed to get, I don't want to say most, but a lot of our serotonin from our relationships. And many people who are depressed have attachment issues, so their relationships are unfulfilling and are broken, and then they are trying to supplement serotonin with dopamine instead.
Let's talk about that, since you went right into attachment, because I definitely want to get into that, but also the other ways that people seek out that dopamine, because it's not just sugar or, right?
Yep.
There's alcohol, there's all kinds of addictions that people use to soothe themselves when they're feeling this sense of being out of control. And obviously that's the negative side of things. And we've talked about the positive ways to gain that back, but let's look at some of the negative sides too, so that maybe some people that are watching can go, oh, I'm kind of doing some of those things. Maybe I should start looking at doing some of the positive ones. So what are the things that you commonly see?
Well, do you want to talk about attachment first real quick and what it is?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So
Yeah, let's get into that.
a lot of people who are listening to this probably don't know what it is because they haven't heard about attachment before, except maybe from Buddhism of don't get attached. Not the same thing, and it's a totally different story. Attachment is the way that a human being gives and receives love from other people. It is connection. It's how you connect to someone else securely. A secure attachment looks like believing, Allie, I'll use you as an example. Believing you and I are in a mutual relationship where you're not trying to exploit each other. We're not trying to play games. I'm not pushing your buttons. You're not pushing mine. We are just talking to each other. If there's a problem, we will solve it together. If I make a mistake, you're not going to jump down my throat and end the relationship. You're going to work with me. And that we will both do that together, that it's mutually fulfilling, and we will work with each other. We will act with. Act with is key here. The other broken side of that, if we're little kids and we don't learn that lesson, we have to learn the good things. Our parents don't just have to not do the bad, they also have to add the good. So if a child goes in the NICU for the first couple of weeks of life and they learn that they cry and cry and cry and they can't get picked up and held skin to skin contact 24 hours a day, but they're in an environment that's more sterilized and they get in smaller touches, they get those things. NICU is a big indicator for potential attachment issues. Daycare, and especially in the first 6 months of life, being left to cry it out, especially in the first 6 months of life. Parents are too depressed to take care of you. Parents are not there, and you grow up wondering, why wasn't I good enough for dad to stay? Parents getting a divorce, and a lot of kids blame themselves for their parents' divorce, even if the parents work as hard as they can to explain why it's not that way. Abuse, of course, neglect, anything that teaches the child that I cannot form a mutually fulfilling circle with other people, that they do not care about my needs. And especially anything where the child is acted upon in a unkind, malicious kind of way, where they exploited. Their buttons are pushed to then act and take care of mom's feelings instead of the child being nurtured and cared for. Acting upon in a negative way, people hate that. Acting upon somebody instead of acting with them over and over and over, and then making them feel like they have to earn approval from other people. What that does to the child's brain is it welds abandonment or disapproval with death. And so people go a couple of ways. One is the anxious attachment style of I have to earn approval from everybody else around me because nobody can ever really love me. There's something wrong with me deep down inside. Everyone else can see it. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong with me. And if I open up, people will see it and they will abandon me. They'll reject me. I'm worthless. So I have to earn approval and can never ask for my needs to get met. So I have to push people's buttons to make them happy so that they will keep me. And that's the anxious style. Then there's the avoidance style of no one, I can't trust anyone. People are going to hurt me if I open up. They're going to shackle me. They're going to exploit me. They're going to just mistreat me. I cannot connect to people. I have to stay back, but I have to push their buttons to make them happy so they'll keep pursuing me. That's the avoidance style, is pursuing. The anxious is chasing. They'll pursue me and I will just give them just enough to keep them coming, but I will never let them get too close because then they will see that I'm weak on the inside or there's something different about me and they will attack me and try to hurt me. So I can't trust anyone. That's the avoidance style, is running. And those two pieces make you act upon other people instead of acting with other people. It becomes impossible to act with. So go back to the beginning of the conversation of when we have traumas, what happened and how do I make sure it never happens again? You can never act with somebody else to stay safe, so you can only push other people's buttons to try to stay safe. When you're upset in a relationship, when you're afraid in a relationship, anytime you are emotional at all, you must act upon other people to get your needs met. You can never act with them, because if you do, you will be exposing yourself and vulnerable, and it's dangerous and terrifying. You have to run away. So anxious and avoidant people both have to push those buttons. This means you can never get real serotonin, not really, in your relationships, because serotonin flows especially from real warm hugs. When we get oxytocin bonding, when our guard is down, we hug, we feel great, we feel bonded, we can relax. You can't really do that when you have those attachment pieces. It's harder. They don't get much oxytocin at all, and we can talk about that later because that really changes the game. But the warm hugs, the real conversations, the deep conversations about things that matter, that bonding, that connectedness, all of that, you're meant to get like all this saturation with serotonin in your relationships all the time, and you can't get it when you have attachment issues. Now, the research shows that about 50% of American adults have an attachment issue. So about 50% of American adults are chronically deficient on serotonin, which is why the research shows that about 1 in 4 American women is on an antidepressant right now. Right now, there she is taking an antidepressant.
I'd rather have her get on a treadmill or not a treadmill.
Treadmills give you a little bit of serotonin. There are things that give you meditation, gives you serotonin. Really good protein foods can give you tryptophan, which can be converted into serotonin. Chicken thighs are one of the best sources for that.
High protein diets are really
high
helpful.
protein diets are great for that. The number of when you do something healthy, your brain rewards you with serotonin. When you do something that just gives you a quick spike, your brain rewards you with dopamine.
Oh, you mean
so many people. What's
and
that?
like sugar, processed carbohydrates.
So when you are chronically low on serotonin, you are always dragging your butt around because you're exhausted and unhappy and life sucks. So your brain says, I am stressed out all the time. And if I get too weak and too tired, I am now in danger zone. So if I go into the world without feeling energetic, I'm going to die and lose everything and everybody. And I'm going to fail people and I'm going to get hurt. So I must drink a Mountain Dew every morning. And then I have to eat fast food and just flood my body with that. And I need to just cruise social media for an hour. And I need to look at porn and get a flood of dopamine, even if I'm not masturbating. I'm just going to look at porn and just get a flood of this images and Instagram models. And then I'm going to play video games that make me feel good and powerful. But that ding, 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 every time you achieve something, those sounds are built to reward with dopamine. Right. Everything in your world, modern world is built to be a dopamine casino where you're just always, always, always hitting it. And you're just never backing out. And that is to overcome the chronic serotonin breakdown that is happening in half of adults because of their ongoing anxiety issues. And that's when they come to you and say, I'm overweight, I can't fix my diet, I'm grieving, it's complicated, I don't have people in my life, please fix me. And you're like, dude, start with the easiest thing, which is to take care of yourself. But then part of the resistance you're encountering is that you're telling them, please stop binging on dopamine when that's the only thing they feel like is keeping them energetic and safe. Yeah. So that's a lot of the resistance you're going to encounter.
Indeed, it is. So when somebody's caught in that loop, what do we do? Right? If they say, I'm depressed, I need to be out socially so I can talk to people. But so I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to restaurants. I'm going to eat all of my food out so that, because we know what's going to happen then.
Yeah, of course.
And I want to work out, and I do, and I play games, and I do this stuff. I'm social. I play golf, or I play basketball, or I go to the gym. So they're doing both of those things, but they still believe that all the crap's going to happen, something's going to, and they can't seem to pull themselves out of this depression, anxiety, and all of that. Like, so where do we make a shift for them? How do we get them like past that tipping point so that things can start snowballing in their favor?
So think about this from 10,000 years ago. Somebody who is that alone and isolated in a village where nobody wants them. So they have to live on the outskirts in the rocks, and nobody will ever take care of them or have their back. The only thing keeping them alive is being on guard and careful all the time. They are not making long-term decisions. They're making short-term decisions. And you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, probably the pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. So people think that attachment is level 3, right? There's food and shelter for today. There's safety and security. Level 3 is belonging and love and connectedness. Level 4 is esteem and achievement and academics. Level 5 is human actualization. People think that attachment is level 3, like love and belonging. I'm just working on love and belonging. No, you are working on level 2, safety and security, because your belief is that your safety and security is reliant on you playing a performance every moment of every day and keeping everybody else at bay and being alone on purpose, because if you don't, you will get hurt and you could die. So that's level 2 is why they can't go up and achieve greater things. They can't focus. Their kids that are having this aren't great in school often, or they're too great in school because they're obsessed with that performance. And that kicks in to the level 2 of, if I don't get perfect straight A's, I am going to get abandoned because everyone will realize I'm garbage. That's also a sign of it too, that perfectionism. You fix this by saying, what would fix somebody 10,000 years ago? It is to connect to a village and tribe of human beings who accept them and will protect them and provide mutual bonding. So it's you and me, Alli, mutual bonding. Hey, I have this problem. Can we work on it together? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I made this mistake. Can you forgive me? Yeah, no problem. Let's talk about it. Hey, I have this need. Can you work on that with me? Yeah, definitely. And here's my needs too. So I feel trusted with your needs. You feel trusted with my needs. We have this attachment. I call it the attachment circle. There's a circle of mutual fulfillment between us where my brain can calm down and I can get all the serotonin, all the bonding chemicals, all the good stuff. So not only is the bad removed, but then the good is added. That's what people would have lived with. I mean, our species is 300,000 years old for Homo sapiens. We live in modern therapy world. It has been this way for the last, 60, 70 years, maybe 100 years. That's a
Right.
long, long time for our brains to have built up and then suddenly have to adapt in 100 years. And no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't
So
work that way. So you fix it. What would have worked back then? Finding a loving tribe, being accepted into it, being safe, being warm, and having that connection. So you have to fix the attachment piece,
so
but you
that's
also have to believe
why
it's possible.
so that's why they're identifying, even if they may not have a mental disorder, they're identifying as my anxiety, my depression, my ADHD, so that
Give
they
our own
can
something.
get connected to a tribe of people that will accept them, because the rest of the world doesn't seem to, or maybe
Explains,
they
Have you
don't.
noticed? Yeah.
and it explains a lot of what you see on Twitter too. All those circles.
Yeah.
It's identity, it's tribalism. Identity politics go really deep into this. And I'm not saying like, hey, people aren't what they know. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the need for identity politics to then become a tribe goes into this. Whatever your identity politics, left wing, right wing, whatever it is, we are building tribes because we're factioning out and we are finding things about us that people can accept and people who feel like we do. We are building tribes where people can accept us and we can have value. Not all of those tribes are healthy. Some of them are based on hyper competitiveness and eating each other, and that's worse. That's almost
Oh, I've
Right.
seen
worse.
some
But
of
it's not.
those
It's
too. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
you see
but
them
it's
on
not worse
Twitter.
than being totally alone.
No, and they come in at both sides too. I think a lot of when you look at some of this, I mean, just to pick on one, some of this like manosphere, red pill Twitter kind of groups of people. You want to talk about people eating each other? It's like it's weird to watch.
It's
Like
like
once
a
you kind of step outside of it, I
dangerous
got
level of cannibalism.
I think a couple of years ago I got scooped up into it for maybe 5 minutes because none of it seemed like it was making much sense. But I was kind of just in a place I was dealing with a lot of anxiety of my own and was looking for that tribe. It makes a lot of sense why I got scooped up into it for a minute. But I'm like, these people are bonkers. Like this does not make any sense. It's like they're just the kind of the feminist side of men to some extent.
The
Instead
yeah,
of I hate all men, it's all hate all women. It's like what?
a lot of these people
Talking
aren't
about justice?
solving. Yeah, they're not solving the attachment problems that have underpinned
Yeah.
it. So they're not getting real acceptance. So then you have groups of people who are, I can never open up and reveal who I am to anybody else. I have to put on a total performance. I can put on a totally fake performance. I just have to learn the rules of our group and then show that I am the most devout member of our group by punishing other people who cross the line because that makes me look even better. And then they devour each other. And that's a way to look good and feel like you're a big person. And that makes you important and it makes you secure and it makes you safe. Not really, but that is an alternate drug that is solving the problem of just finding 2 to 3 people who accept you, opening up yourself completely to them, testing if you really are unlovable and testing if you can really not trust people, and then finding that you can, and then building that love back in. And that transforms a human being. I have done so much work and worked with hundreds of people over the years, and just opening up and receiving real acceptance from other people, saying, I am an anxious person, I perform, I be fake, I pull away when it's going to be real. I'm afraid of that. And sometimes I violate my principles just to keep myself safe, but I hate it. And I never want to do it again. Is it okay if we build an honest relationship? And that's the hardest conversation they ever have had. And the other person says, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and do it. And their brain gets this rush of
Mhm.
dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, vasopressin. It just like it hits them and they freak out because it's the first time they've got the brain chemicals our species are built to get all the time, every day with our friends and family. And
Yeah.
they're overwhelmed by this sudden new cocktail of drugs that they've never had. And then they obsess over it and they crave it because this is what love feels like. This is what acceptance feels like. You do that with 2 to 3 people, and then your brain freaks out because it has never felt this and it thinks something has gone wrong, that you are now loved. And then you start testing it and leaning into it and building honesty and choosing to be open and connected and then receive acceptance. And your brain rewrites its neural pathways in like weeks, months, sometimes like 2 months. I've seen 1 month. I've seen people go from heroin addiction of, hey, Adam, I just came from the hospital after a hold from overdosing on heroin, and people hate me, and I don't know what to do in my life, and I'm so alone. And I say, Do you want to die or do you want to live? I want to live. Okay, do these things right here. Go home and do them. And they go home and they connect to 3 people that week, no matter how scary it is. And they come back like shell shocked and say, I never thought I could be accepted by people. And by the end of the month, they not only don't have heroin cravings, they are angry and hateful against the heroin actively. They have built accountability into their life. They've repaired a lot of their relationships, and they are happier than they've ever been in their entire life. I've had couples come into my office 2 weeks after an affair has been discovered, and they aren't sure if they want to save their marriage or not. And they both have attachment issues, and I teach them attachment. And 2 to 3 weeks later, they come back into the office, and they are both beaming and smiling and happier and more emotionally intimate and open and honest with each other, living to their principles and proactive about building that at openness, not just doing it for pressure to try to make the other person feel good. They are happy and happier than they've ever been, even when they were newlyweds. And the affair was 4 or 5 weeks prior to that. So that's the power of it.
Very quick forgiving. Most people would find that yeah.
Do you know what trustworthiness is? Do you know what trustworthiness is from forgiving someone? How do you forgive someone that fast? Really quick for this. Trustworthiness comes from having an internal code of conduct that you make explicit to other people and then live consistently when it costs you something over and over and over so people can see it. That's what trustworthiness is. Most people miss one of those steps. So they don't have the internal code, or they do, but other people can pressure them to violate it, or they violate it themselves to start feeling better, or they don't make it explicit, so they just talk about things that make them seem cool, but they don't live to their code, or they are inconsistent with their code, so people can't trust them. And women always say, can I forgive my husband after an affair? If he's trustworthy on his own, at the end of 2 weeks, he will either be de-escalating because you're not pressuring him anymore, and he'll be like testing to see if you are still mad, and if he can go back to his old behaviors, or he'll be increasing them because he loves being a man of principle and he's really changing for him, not for you. By the end of 3 weeks, he will either be completely back to his old behaviors and you can't trust him, or he will be exponentially increasing and you will be asking him to please hold back because he's becoming too principled and too trustworthy, and you can then trust him because he's become trustworthy. And then he will be proactively building transparency into the relationship, not as a way to earn your approval, but because it's who he is. He will have changed his identity as a human being, and you'll be giving him acceptance instead of giving him validation. That's really how you can see if you can trust someone. That is the power of good attachment. That's the power of proactive, healthy, good attachment right there.
So if somebody had or thought they had good attachment as a child, but then something happened in adulthood, and then and then a traumatic event happened, so now they're more of like in an avoidant attachment. Back, how do they take those buttons off and put them away and get rid of that so they can't get pushed and they get back to that healthy attachment again?
Sometimes there's a mild underlying attachment issue that was there, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you accidentally connect yourself with someone who is severely avoidant and then who acts upon you and harms you for their own, I don't want to say pleasure, but for their own ends, to build their own stability, security, and to get their dopamine binges. They act upon you over and over and over, and then gaslight you about it and control you. All of this can lead to an attachment wound, which is then makes it scary, and you become functionally avoidant because you're backing out, and your brain is saying, what are all the factors that went into this? How do I make sure it never happens again? And you have no idea, and your emotional brain is agitated whenever you think of that person and that circumstance. So you back off because you don't know how to build a healthy relationship in that way and make sure it's safe and keep yourself safe. You know how to love somebody, but you don't know how to make sure what you're receiving is real. So you become functionally avoidant. To do that, to fix that, you learn about attachment, which you've now learned from me. You identify trustworthiness. What are their principles? Do they talk about them? And do they live them consistently when it costs them something? And are they proactive about transparency and about building that relationship with you, where they're working with you, where they are meeting your needs, not to what we call love bomb you, where they're saturating you with dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, but where they're meeting your needs and getting their needs met in return in a very comfortable relationship, working with. Are they working with you, or are they trying to solve your problems so that you like them and then you will love them instead, chase them? Which is it? Are they working with you, or are they working upon you? And then how do they solve problems? How do they solve stress? How do they act when they are stressed out? These are the big pieces. Do they act with, or do they act upon? And if they're acting with, do they consistently act with, especially when they're stressed out? Those are the big pieces. That's why it's crucial to identify those people. So identify the red flags and the green flags, and then you move forward. And that will begin to heal your attachment wound. Then when you put it in experience, you will experience the healing and see the difference and experience the loving relationship you're in with that person. And that will also start to heal your brain pathways. That's why. And that's how.
So to like, go into their cave when they're stressed out. So
Yeah.
how does a woman witness this and not think you're avoiding and pulling away, and have that not trigger the same stuff in her?
Absolutely. No, it is him pulling away. And when men pull away, they are finding a solution. The male brain goes forward and back. It goes back and forward. It goes back to observe and forward to act. And if they get stuck on a solution, it clicks, and you can hear it clicking. And that's when men start to get really frustrated and depressed. You can. Smoke starts coming out of his ears. And what he is supposed to do is then seek out new data from somebody else who has solved the problem, put new data in his machine, and then come out with a solution, and then go forward to act. He's like a robot who needs another data implant. He needs an update. That's what it is. It's observe and then act. And men will not talk to women if they don't think the woman is involved in finding that solution. Men just don't. Men talk to communicate. Men communicate to solve problems. If you are not part of the solution, then he has no reason to talk to you about it. So he's off in the corner thinking about how to fix his motorcycle that he has no idea how to fix. And you think that the marriage is ending because he refuses to speak to you, has marched off into the corner, and will not connect with you or share what's wrong with you. What's wrong with him? So it must be about you. And the marriage is over and intimacy is dead. That's that fear. Men need to learn that the female brain goes back and forth more than it does, but not it goes back and observes, then forward, back.
Well, then
Analyzes.
That's where the ping pong.
And it does. It connects, and it makes all these connections over the brain of all the additional relationships. This is why when men often say, "Hey, where do you want to go to eat tonight?" She goes, "Ugh." And the more anxious she is chronically, the more her brain will freeze up on what it's trying to do, because her brain says, where did we go last time? What does he want? How do I make sure he has a good experience? What if we go to the wrong restaurant? Well, what does he feel like? And her brain is analyzing. And that's just for women who are anxious, that is often too much. That's why women who are anxious become I don't know, whatever you want to do. That's what that becomes, is just to ease her anxiety and her stress. The way that you approach this, I teach men this all the time. So women who are listening, send your husbands to me. Men must learn that women communicate to bond mostly, and women communicate to connect and to share and to be intimate and to show trust and also to find solutions also, but it's primarily that bonding and trusting and connecting. So what men should do is take a problem, go to their wife and say, hey, here's what's happening. I'm pissed off, and here's how it makes me feel. This problem, it's pissing me off. Here's what I think I'm going to do about it. So tell her the solution, and don't ask her, should I do it? You say, before I do this, can you give me any insights on this? What do you think of this solution? Do you think, what can you tell me something? What do you think of this? Tell me your insights. Give me your input here. And what he's telling her is, here's my observation. Before I act upon it, can you do the magic where your brain goes back and forth? And I will do this with my wife. And I'll say, here's the problem. Here's my solution. What do you think of this? What are you seeing? And she'll say, well, yeah, this will fix this over here that you're focused on. But what about this piece way over here that's about to explode if you do that? And I go, how did you even think of that? It's because her brain is making those connections. And I say, that's great. Thank you for telling me that. I think I'm going to switch. And you don't say, what should I do? You say, okay, here's what I'm going to switch. I think I'm going to do this. Do you see the same problems? She goes, nope, that one seems to check out. And I say, okay, thank you. Very helpful. And then I march off to go do it. And she now feels trusted. She feels validated. She feels useful to me. And she feels like she has a purpose in my life that makes her more useful than being a warm body. So I will not leave her for the next 19-year-old blonde who wanders by. I'm going to stick with her because she is now more valuable to me than anybody else can be. And the more problems we solve together, the more useful she becomes and the more irreplaceable she becomes. So the female drive goes way up at that point. This is the female Viagra everyone's looking for, because she now is a part of his life and doesn't have to be afraid. And she starts understanding his thought processes and what he's going to be doing. So he can become predictable, and she gets to know his principles, and she gets to know everything about him. This right here This right here will triple the amount of sex that a couple has in their marriage if the man starts doing this actively, like every couple of days, two to three times a week. Do this on purpose with your wife, at least once a week, please, fellas. This will triple the amount of sex a couple has, and she
So
will
this
be
is the
initiating it.
attraction bond.
It is, and this is also what it is men bond better through vasopressin than they do through oxytocin. So oxytocin is warmth and care and nurturing, and it's the lack of stress bonding when you're spending time in a lack of stress. Vasopressin is stress that you resolve together. It is his brain then saying, you are incredibly useful. You are a great asset in my life as a human being. I want you around. So then he starts emotionally investing and then begins the oxytocin bonding with her, which is what she needs to have her drive go up, to make it easier during intercourse, to make it fun and have her like 5 climaxes. That's a lot of that is oxytocin. She needs that, but for him to emotionally invest, he needs to be getting vasopressin. And if they don't renew that vasopressin bond every so often, when they hit a crisis point, he is going to go find someone else to solve problems with and not her. And they know, and women know that. So when women say, we are in a rut, we should do something new, she is saying, we should have a new experience that introduces an amount of stress, and then we will resolve it together. And then it will remind you that we are vasopressin bonded. That's what her brain is saying. Women intuitively know that this is how men work. So they want to be, back to depression, women want to be loved and they want to be useful to the people that they love. They want to enact vasopressin bonds in other people so that they also will be kept and will be loved and bonded with and be valuable to that person. All of this flows together, and it doesn't work when there's an attachment issue because he can't ask for his needs to get met. She can't ask for her needs to get met. She can't try to be useful. She doesn't believe she's useful. He doesn't even know what to do. He's avoiding, or he's too anxious to even ask. And all of this gets torn apart, and then they start chasing feelings, and that's how affairs happen. That's how divorces happen. When you fix that attachment issue, you have these healthy bonds. The research shows that vasopressin bonds are one of the biggest piece. As you renew it, they're one of the biggest predictors of the longevity of a relationship. If you renew the vasopressin bonds like that through healthy attachment, that is one of the biggest predictors for staying together as a couple. So there you go. There's the secret.
Wow. I love that.
That's a lot of download, but it all makes perfect sense.
It does. You can see it.
That's how we work.
Right? Yeah, you can see it, and I can just see it over the past couple of years of all the changes that I've made. It's like, shit, that's in a nutshell.
Chris, when your car or motorcycle is broken down and you're trying to think about how to fix it, tell your wife that that's what's happening. Tell her what you think you're going to do and just ask for her input. And if she has no idea, that is okay. But whenever something's going wrong, that's what you need to do right there. Here's the problem. Here's how I feel about it. Give me your input before I do it so I don't do something stupid. And then praise her for the value that she gives and the insight and the wisdom and be genuine. And then give her a hug and walk away, and she will find you later that night, and she will be a wild animal, and that's how it's going to work.
I love that.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. So can we segue into kids for a second? So
absolutely.
I don't even know where to start with this one. I mean, obviously, it's really important to have that great attachment with each other to demonstrate that to children. But if you're a single parent, because there's lots of us out there, what can we do to help? Because obviously when there's a divorce, that attachment is, not there. What can we do what can we do for our kids? What can we do to help build that secure attachment? Maybe all you can do is do it to you, but how do we do that to help inoculate against maybe an insecure attachment that's happening in another home?
Absolutely. The way that we do this is be explicit with our children what's happening so they never have to guess what the context is, because they will blame themselves and they will think of the worst possible thing. And then you set up every opportunity to work together instead of acting upon them. Instead of acting upon them, you work with them and you bring them in, you invite them to work on their problems together with you as a team. You make it explicit that you will always love them. You give them the boundaries of what would cause a rift in the relationship. You work with them on all that. I have a 5-year-old son, and I work with him even when it's time to discipline him. I explain to him what's going to happen. If he does X, Y, or Z, I explain why. I make it very clear. If he almost crosses the line, I warn him, and I say, please do not do this. Neither one of us wants this to happen. Please make sure you don't do this. And if he does, I say, okay, this is going to happen, and here's why, because it could hurt our relationship. So here's what needs to happen for this discipline, not punishment. Punishment is acting upon. Discipline is acting with and working and teaching, because your kids are apprentice adults. They are not just like little goblins that you're trying to raise. So you work with them and say, here's what's going to happen. And then you discipline them however you're going to. And then you have what is called a reunification ritual after the discipline of, do you understand what happened? Here's how we make sure it never happens again. I love you. I want to work with you. Here is how we're going to make sure this doesn't happen together as a team so that we don't go through this experience again. And you do that, and that refreshes their brain and refreshes their brain. I've seen this work with teenagers. I've seen this work with 4-year-olds. This is the process. And you must be spending active time together with them, asking them questions, teaching them about attachment. That's one of the best things you can do, is just teach them how attachment works. Teach them their brain might not be recognizing the right messages. Ask them if they ever feel like you might not love them anymore. Ask them if they think that it's possible. They might say, no, it's totally fine. And you can use yourself as an example and say, sometimes I used to believe that it was possible for people to just stop loving me, that I could mess up so bad people would hate me, that people wouldn't work with me, that there was something wrong with me. But I realized that those were bad messages I was hearing and that my family loved me. Do you ever feel like that? Because I used to feel that way. And that can help, letting them know it's normal and that you have felt it and that you've overcome it. That can help. Working with your teens on this is phenomenally important, because they're reaching that point where teens who have attachment issues usually are purely anxiety in childhood. And then once they hit 13, 14, 15, 16, they can start turning into depression pieces. That's why teenage depression is now so normal in the Western world. It's because attachment issues are blowing up into depression. That's the cycle. You can help them avert that. And you can help them avert a lot of the difficult, bad choices that teens make that are risky by talking to them, spending time with them. I tell people this: if you spend 10 minutes a day with your child, not making any statement, but say, I'm going to spend 10 minutes a day with you because you are so important to me. I will never miss this. We are going to play games. So we're not just sitting and talking. We're going to play a game or do something cool. Like go fish, do a puzzle, something where we're not staring at each other, where our hands and our brains are a little bit busy. And I'm just going to ask you cool questions about you because I'm so curious to get to know you. And let's just talk. And you will set a literal timer for 10 minutes a day. I have seen angry, defiant teens turn around in 3 weeks of 10 minutes a day of doing a puzzle together and talking and just asking them questions, not scolding them, not lecturing them, not telling them what to do and how to think, but just talking with them and being curious and telling them explicitly, I am doing this because our relationship is so important to me and you are a priority. So here's what I'm going to do. And they respond. At first they're, I don't know. That sounds, and then 3 weeks in, they're like, hey Dad, it's time. Come on. We got like my 10 minutes. Come on. Because you are so into them and so into that you show them that love. They get that serotonin, they start repairing that attachment, and then they can start asking you those deeper questions and testing if you will work with them or if you will act upon them or abandon them or hurt them. Mm-hmm. And as they experience that love with you, you start healing them, and it might start healing you too.
I love that. I guess I inadvertently did that, but I didn't say, I want to spend these minutes with you because I love you so much. I think they just kind of knew that I love them, so
I'm doing it. But make it as explicit as possible. No interpretation. As explicit as possible, because they get a flood of serotonin, even if they're a little weirded out. They still get serotonin from hearing how much you love them and how much of a priority they are. It's an opportunity. Take it, even if it's a little weird.
Opportunity, and it's really easy for a smart kid to dismiss those types of behaviors as, oh, well, it wasn't that she loves me that much. She just wanted to be in the same room at the same time, right? Like that's an avoidant attachment type of scenario, right? Like, they don't really love you. It was something else.
It can be either one, anxious or avoidant. There's also the third one, disorganized, which most people don't have, but it can be anything. No, it can be anything. It's the belief about themselves and the belief about others. And if you make it explicit and talk with them and then be consistent, it helps. Because exactly like you said, the smarter the kid, the easier it is for them to misunderstand, because their brain has 10 different alternate theories instead of, hey, she loves me. Nope, wait a minute. Yeah, so make it explicit. Be really dumbly obvious. Build them an instruction manual.
Overthink too. So
maybe
it happens. It happens. Make it as stupidly obvious as possible so no human being on Earth could possibly misinterpret it. Build them an instruction manual as if they have come from Mars to come be part of your family, and then work with them that way. And that is the best thing that you could possibly give to somebody, because then they can't misinterpret and you can build that love together.
I love that.
I did have a question about, you mentioned those two attachment styles again, and I was curious, can one person go back and forth between the two or sometimes have both? Or is it usually one?
So There is something called disorganized attachment style, which is also called the anxious avoidant, which goes back and forth between the two, where you are avoidant and you keep everybody out. But when you do let somebody in, you become super anxious and you desperately want to keep them. But then you switch back of, I can't do this. I need to keep you out. So hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold.
Oh.
That is the disorganized anxious attachment. So the disorganized / anxious avoidant attachment style. Only about 2 to 5% of the U.S. population has that. But it is there. I've worked with many, many of those people.
That's what that is. Okay. The
absolute extreme versions of this would be something like borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, which is the violent one, often with criminals. Right. Those are the extreme versions of attachment issues. Those are the only ones that the APA really recognizes as actual attachment. They say if you have attachment issues, it will always turn into a personality disorder. So don't even worry about it. If you don't see that, it's not an attachment issue.
Right.
Well, the science is finally catching up with reality. So.
Right. I mean, that's kind of like saying, well, if you eat a little bit too much food, you're always going to end up obese. It's like, no, there's skinny fat people. There's all kinds of. You may not be healthy, but you're not going to be 200 pounds.
Correct. Exactly right.
Right. So that's silly.
And but you know what? I love it. I know my dog. Hi. Thanks for the input. But what that does is it gives me a little bit of hope, because usually what I've heard is, oh, if you have a personality disorder, you're done. Like
that's the other thing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's just put you in a straitjacket. You're done. Let's medicate you. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You know what?
Reset.
I hate that model, because here's something that most people don't know. Is there was a study in, I think it was Finland, maybe 15 years ago, where they took people who had schizophrenia and they took them and their families and they put them in a not mental institution, but a facility where they did not medicate the person at all. Zero medication. They did intensive family therapy to repair the bonds, to build connection between the family, to build love and acceptance, to educate everybody about what was going to happen with schizophrenia, how to fix it, how to help the person, how to comfort them, basically fixed attachment in the family, and then studied the families for years afterward. And what they found was that people who had schizophrenia and fixed their attachment with their families never had to be hospitalized again, almost never. Wow. Their incidence of having schizophrenia episodes vastly decreased. Wow. The amount, and if they did have them, the severity of them and the length of them was vastly decreased also. So people think that schizophrenia is this death sentence that is just uncontrollable. All you could do is throw medication at it and put them in a subsidized living facility on a fixed income. They're on permanent disability.
Makes the attachment issues worse.
You fix the attachment issues with their family, and all of a sudden they can live their lives without medication.
Right.
So
the
look
idea
at that.
Get zero medication and actually heal that. I mean, let's just throw out the DSM then.
The DSM is useful because it describes so many things that spring from attachment issues, and then how to fix them, but fix the attachment issues. We have the medical model here in the Western world of throw a pill at it, take a gram and don't give a damn is the phrase. We have that model here in the Western world. That's from a book. That's from a book called, I think it was Brave New World, of take a gram, don't give a damn. And that was it. That's our saying here in the West. I've worked with people who are on 27 different medications at the same time, and 9 or 10 of those are just psych meds, and they don't know what they're taking or why, and they're on 10 different psych meds. And they don't know what it is, but it's not working. They're just miserable. They wish they were dead. And fix the attachment, and all of a sudden life starts getting better. And you know what? A lot of medical issues start getting better too. So fix the attachment. So when people say personality disorders can't be fixed, when they say attachment styles are set and you cannot change your attachment style, and if you have borderline, you are a terrible person, we just need to throw you in a cage. No, those are all lies. You can absolutely fix these things. The biggest step is believing that you can. And Alli, that's where you come in, is you begin by showing somebody that they can have even control over their body, begins changing and challenging the thought that they have zero control over anything. Well, no, now they can control their body. Now they can get strong. Now they can lose weight. Now they can endure a little bit more physical punishment. Now they can look better. Now they can take some pride in themselves. What else do I have power over that I didn't think I had power over before? And Alli, you are the very first step on somebody believing it is possible to heal from their attachment issues, from their personality issues. You are the very first step on that, because they must believe before they can do it.
For sure. Oh, I had something great I was going to say while you were in the middle of talking, but now I was like just hanging on every word. Love it. Yeah, no, I think the idea that that you can't change the whole neuroplasticity in your brain is a completely bunk thing, and the disease model of addiction, I've never agreed with that. I was the only one in my grad school class. It was like, no, that's a bunch of crap, and they were like, oh, Alli. I'm like, it is.
It doesn't make sense.
Because you're medicating it for something, right? Like there's some, and when that thing is healed, you no longer want the thing that was medicating it. It's not.
Do you know what they told me? Do you know what they told me in grad school? Going into being a therapist, going into being a licensed marriage and family therapist, what they told our whole graduating class: if you have an affair in a marriage, you should never disclose it to the other person, because all you're doing is trying to make yourself feel better at their expense. So you should just be quiet and continue the marriage. As if that's not going to have any problems or any repercussions on the attachment, on the emotional intimacy. No, just lie.
And as though they're not going to feel it. Give me a break.
Therefore, the elephant in the room. It's like if you feel
just keep lying. That's the best thing you can do for your marriage. That is what they told us in grad school as marriage therapists. So yeah, the Western system in many ways is very flawed. People need to understand attachment is usually at the core of a lot of problems, not all, but a lot. And it makes everything worse. So fix your attachment. Begin that by working with Alli. By believing you can fix your body and heal your body and make changes, then fix your attachment. And fixing your body, fixing your diet, and fixing your attachment will get you 99% of the way toward the life you actually want to live. And then you can deal with whatever medical issues or whatever financial issues are on top of that. You can deal with them so much better because you have this fully calm and fully logical brain with the chemicals you need, and a loving support system, and a fairly healthy body as much as you can get, and a good diet and all the brain chemicals you need. And that turns you into a powerhouse, and people will write books about you, about the things you accomplish, because it's the magic formula.
Because almost no one's doing it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow. We got a lot of people to fix, Adam.
No kidding. Well, let's see. Half of America, so there's 300 million of us. So I'll take that's 150 million. So you take 75 million, I'll take the other 75 million, and we'll meet in the middle.
We'll tag team. We'll just come at them from both sides.
There you go.
We got the attachment and just go.
That's right.
I really respect and love your approach. One of the things that has always frustrated me about the psychological and therapeutic community is this lack of understanding about the gut-brain axis, how what we're eating, our gut microbiome, how it's affecting mood, and that's a behavior, and that's probably triggering off attachment issues that are underlying all of that. Even if they were doing a good job of keeping it at bay, it's like getting like they can't control it at some point, right? It's like kicking on. And they don't ever address how, like, okay, you take a pill, it's a chemical. The food that you put in your mouth is a chemical too.
They're all chemicals, and your brain's making a whole bunch that it
correct.
When you're
correct.
It's them too. It's like
it's like how do you fire a gun? Well, you load it, you load the chamber, and then you pull the trigger. Okay, so nutrition, you must load the chamber with the bullet, and then you must have good attachment to pull the trigger. So if you have no serotonin, and your diet is giving you no good food with tryptophan that will turn into serotonin, start eating chicken thighs all the time, every meal, right? Start eating foods that will give you tryptophan, which can convert into serotonin, and then pull the trigger and begin doing things that will convert tryptophan into serotonin, and give yourself serotonin events that will cause that serotonin release. So eat healthier, and then start doing things that give you serotonin, whether it's working out, meditating, praying, getting hugs from people, having good conversations, bonding with people, being open with people, all of those give you serotonin, which fights depression, fights anxiety, and improves your life.
And recondition the gut so that those serotonin and receptors and those cortisol receptors are not being blocked, keeping it in your blood instead of being taken up again. That's one of the bigger ones that I've seen too. Like, nobody wants a bunch of cortisol roaming around there, keeping the anxiety levels nice and high. All you got to do is drive down an LA freeway. You know what I'm talking about. Honk, honk.
That's all of your cortisol for a year in one 5-minute segment, or in 1 hour segment, so you can drive 1 mile on the LA.
Right. Especially on a Friday or Saturday night. That's why I don't go to LA. I don't leave my happy little Orange County place. We stay right here. I got everything I need. They're like, let's go to Vegas and party. Nah, I got everything I need right here. And the beach.
The beach is that way.
You can take your desert and all your nightclubs. I'm going to stay right here. Yeah.
Perfect.
Adam, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll drop you the link, and I'm gonna promote the heck out of this one. I'm gonna send it out to all my clients and be like, I'm just putting this right here.
Yeah.
Just in case any of this.
This is homework.
There you go. Sign up with Adam for 2 or 3 sessions. Fix your attachment. Come back. Then we'll fix your gut, and your body, and everything. There you go. We'll tag team on it.
Because I talk a lot about mindset with my group clients. Well, even of course my private clients too. The one-on-ones. A lot about mindset, because there's so much. That was one thing I wanted to talk with you about too. So the pain model, the medical pain model of there's something hurting in your body and your brain is receiving that signal. So that's where the pain is coming from, is not 100%. Since we're debunking a whole lot of the medical myths here. The idea that there's emotions that are kicking off and it's getting expressed in your body seems like woo-woo to a lot of people. And I've got clients that are in pain, and I'm going, I can see why you're in pain. You're upset. But it's not coming from, like, your knee is fine. Right? Like, we got some stuff to work on. So when do you identify that? What would you say? Like, how do you get somebody to start to understand that it's probably not the body that's hurting, probably the mind?
Let's back that up even for a moment. Even if it is the body that's hurting, everything your mind is doing completely impacts that and makes it worse. So if your stress level is high, your inflammation is going to be high, your body's going to get worse. So by fixing your relationships and your mind, you can crush pain down to like half, down to 1/4. You can diminish your active pain levels that much. And if it is in your body, if it's in your brain, and your brain is affecting your body, we call that somatic experiencing, somatic pieces, somatic experiences. There's somatic experiencing therapies. There are therapies designed specifically for that, for the people who actually believe it's possible for your brain to be affecting you. Because a lot of it's like, that's not really. No, it is. Fix your relationships first, and then see how your body starts to feel. Because a lot of people, when they get a little bit of physical pain and they feel a little bit debilitated, they get kind of depressed, they pull away from their relationships, and that makes them feel really bad. But if you have been depressed, or if you've been anxious your whole life, your body will feel chronically locked up all the time. You may never have experienced what zero anxiety feels like, because your brain has always been high anxiety. So you are always high cortisol. You've probably burned out your adrenal glands. You've done a number of things, and you've pushed that. If you had to not express your pain externally, emotionally, and couldn't talk about it to your family because they were hurting you or awful to you, you might have shoved it down into your body instead, and your body carries all of that stress and misery instead. I have people, they come to me and they think, I'm not there. I've never been anxious in my life. And we start the anti-anxiety behaviors and the treatments, and their body collapses because they are all of a sudden relaxing muscles they've never relaxed before in their entire life. Since they were like 2 years old, their body is finally relaxing, and all this pain comes out more than it was before, and then starts to go away completely. And it was chronic low-level pain from their emotional state, just shoving all the problems down. Because as you get stressed, you burn magnesium, which allows your muscles to relax, and so you are burning through the thing that even allows you to relax. So you have to use more magnesium, which is deficient in the American diet because our soils are very depleted. that right there, that whole cycle, just fixing your stress levels even just makes you process nutrients better. That can
Mhm.
start to diminish a lot of that pain cycle. So people that come into me and they're like, I've had chronic pain treatments because I just can't ever get better and it's never going to get better. And I say, okay, well, let's put the pain aside for a moment. Let's talk about your relationships. Oh, I don't even get me started. And then we start fixing their relationships and all of a sudden, like, hey, how's your pain doing? Oh, I don't know. I must just be having a good day. It's just starting to get better. Okay, well, how many good days have you had in a row? Well, like 2 or 3 weeks of good days. There was one day that wasn't that good. So I mean the pain is still with me. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that. All right, cool. Let's just keep going. Let's see how your pain does. Let's keep measuring it. And it's just it is what it is. People believe that they cannot get better, and then they start getting better, and they can't believe that they're actually getting better because they're afraid they're going to get unbetter and it's going to
Right.
crash, so they don't want to hope and they're not thinking, but then they start to experience and then they start to say, well, I wonder what's happening. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. It's just magic.
That's the
And
silly
it's amazing
people.
how it works.
It's like, oh my god, I'm afraid it might get better, and then it might get worse again.
I'm afraid of success.
That's it.
I'm afraid
That's the internal.
you might lose it.
That's the it's called an external locus of control. Of I didn't make this success happen, so I am secretly a fraud. So eventually the success will go away, and I
Yes,
will
you-
crash, and everyone will see I'm a fraud. That's what that is. That's the fear of
Right.
success.
It's the right. I don't deserve it unless I earned it.
And I could never earn it because I'm not the kind of person who can earn these good things. So eventually it's going to go away
It's
and my
nothing
life will be
but-
crap again.
Yeah.
So don't bother getting attached to anything that's good, because then you won't be disappointed when it goes away or blah, blah,
Correct.
blah. Wow.
Correct. Like I
Mm,
said, it all starts with you. Help people believe they can change their bodies and you help them believe they can change their life.
I love
That's
it.
step one.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect note to end on too. Adam, I really appreciate you being here. I know Chris does too.
Absolutely.
And I want you to come back because that was really good. That
I
was.
would love to come back.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
do it
let's
again.
simmer for a while, and then we'll have
We'll have other
More questions.
more questions, more things
Write
to
them
talk.
down.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my clients. Write them down because you're going to have a lot of things you want to talk about. When this starts to filter, they go back and forth across the hemispheres of the brain. You start experiencing, acting upon it, and
get a
observing.
few workouts in,
You get a few
Process
workouts in.
Your
I-
cardio, please.
lifting weights.
Well, the great thing
There's a
about
lot of
lifting
stuff.
weights is that you do
Mm.
cross the midline of your body, so you're building those new cross bridges. And I always tell my clients, like, if you got something on your mind, process it while you're doing cardio. Think about
Yeah.
it through the whole thing, and it's the better time to do it.
That is because it keeps your brain chronically low and you can't spike emotionally. So you got it. Yep, that is scientifically you are 100% right.
Right, because that's what. Oh, thank you. So
Mhm.
ending on this now, I promise, maybe.
Maybe.
So at my old gym, there was a neurologist guy that I knew. Interestingly, he had seizures, really bad seizures, lots of trauma in his past. And I said, I think that if we were processing trauma while we were exercising, like on the treadmill or something, that it would be easier. Like we would be able to we'd process it faster and get out of, like, heal the trauma quicker. And he stopped for a moment and he said, you would, because when you're not moving your body, you have this cascade of hormones and things like that are pulling you down. So you're afraid to go because it feels like you're never going to get out. But if you're forcing dopamine and serotonin and endorphins while you're doing it, then you feel like you can get out of it. And so I always kind of hold on. If something's bothering me, I'm just going to go to the gym. I'm going to hang on to that, go to the gym and like start and just do more cardio that day to process it out, because I don't want to deal with it outside of that anymore.
That's the right answer.
Oh, and that's my son.
Yep.
Sounds like it's dinner time.
Perfect.
Let's get him in there. My tummy says the same.
Thank you so much, Adam. Mwah. I wish I could hug you right now. Thank you.
That's the serotonin. There we go.
See? Thank you. Now we're all attached. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Bye.